good evening, and good evening again, and welcome to this evening's episode of the Hearts of Men podcast, sponsored by the Empowering Perspective community. We are your hosts for this evening's conversation. I am the mindset coach, Dwayne Dwyer himself. To my left, you see my friend rolling down the street, Minister Roland Walker. Up under him, you see my brother from another mother. Across the table with Mr. Chris McClellan, and below me is the Uncle Junior himself, Mr. Build Your Creed, Garfield Martin. Gentlemen, how are you this evening?
I am well. I'm well. It's been a long time since I've been able to say that and actually mean it. I'm good.
That's what I'm talking about. I love it.
And I'm good. I just had a Wednesday and Thursday were long days. Today was a long day, but I got some rest. Slept in a couple hours, but I got my run in this afternoon, man. So it's busy, but at the same time, like I'm ready to roll. About to go to school tonight.
Hmm.
I don't know about the school thing. Minister Walker, how you doing, brother?
Man, you know what I've been doing all day. I guess you got to appreciate having the ability to have decent credit
There you go.
where you don't have to do a bunch of jumping through hoops for things that you want or need.
That's what's up, man. Mr. Big Willie himself, rolling Walker.
Big Willie.
Listen,
Like
listen,
that.
I want to make sure that I give honor where honor due. Welcome to everybody that's in the chat. Always good to see you. Michelle Ray, welcome. Bernadette Simmons, welcome. Let me see who else. Miss Charlotte Jordan, welcome. Always good to see you.
Always
Lisa
go.
Keys, welcome. And anybody else who have not been able to jump in the chat yet, I want to make sure that I welcome you. So welcome. And listen, if this is your first time on the Hearts of Men podcast, by all means, go ahead and hit the subscribe button in the lower right hand corner of your screen, share it, and go ahead and give us some likes. You know, we like likes, and the algorithm like likes as well. So we want to make sure that we make YouTube happy. For all you guys on Facebook, we love you too. So go ahead and give us a heart on Facebook, because Facebook tends to like it, and we like it as well. This conversation is the continuation of childhood trauma, and hopefully this will be the last week of childhood trauma, man. I think you guys are probably about traumatized out. But listen, listen, tonight, and I put in the chat, and I hope you guys seen it. If you got relationship questions, I think tonight might be that night. So by all means, I want to go ahead and extend the invitation right now. If there are questions based upon what we're talking about that are specific to the conversation, right, go ahead and put them in the chat. I am all about entertaining your questions, and we welcome your questions as well. So tonight we're going to be talking about the shocking connection between childhood trauma and adult attachment disorder. Now, this again is another one of those conversations. You might get triggered a little bit. Again, give yourself some grace. Go ahead and drink some water. Take a deep breath and understand that this is not a personal attack against anybody that is on this platform tonight, or anybody that's in the chat, or anybody. Like, we're not bringing any other person's lifestyle into this conversation but our own. And then we'll also share some of the things that we observe, and probably some of the experiences that we've had as we progress through life. Now, I talked about attachment, and I want to make sure I'm touching on it real good here, because I want to define attachment, because again, that's an important piece here. So attachment refers to how we connect, trust, and otherwise attach to other people. Now, I think this is an important thing to consider, because this is really the definition of relationship. I don't care how you look at it. It is literally the beginning stages of relationship, and it kind of defines how you behave in relationship as well. And this starts as early as like your toddler years, man, really before that. So in essence, when we're talking about attachment, we're talking about how fast the parent responds to the child in distress. So just think about baby, saw their pamper, or they're hungry and baby starts crying. How fast do you respond to baby? How fast do you give baby what he wants? How fast do you get that dirty diaper off of baby? That is what we're talking about when we're talking about that response. If baby is crying, do you pick baby up and hold him close to your chest, or do you let baby cry it out? So those things kind of matter as we're moving forward. And when it comes down to attachment theory, it really breaks it down into like four different categories. So first and foremost, I want to start with secure attachment. So secure attachment is generally a positive emotional bond with self and others. Now, I got it. Somebody's probably thinking right now, how does baby, have a positive emotional bond. Well, trust me, it factors. When baby starts crying, baby wants you to come to him or her. So that's kind of like what we're talking about. Next, we're going to go into what is called anxious attachment. Now, anxious attachment is the desire for intimacy, anxious in relationships, and feel like others are emotionally unavailable to them. So when you leave baby alone, right? Baby gets to the point where we think baby is getting to the point where they're self-soothing themselves. But in essence, what actually happens, baby's like, oh, they ain't coming. Let me just stop crying. And so they get to the point where it kind of creates a small degree of separation. Next is what we would call the avoidant and dismissive attachment. Now, this is where you start to struggle with intimacy and feel uncomfortable with closeness and seeking high levels of independence. So, ideally, he's baby becomes independent simply because baby gets to the point where feel like nobody's going to do it for me, right? And then last but not least, you have what is called disorganized attachment. And disorganized attachment is an intense chaotic relationship patterns that typically consist of a combination of desiring closeness while subsequently pushing people away. I think it's important to understand that these things emerge in childhood and they continue to impact the types of relationships people have throughout their lives. With that being said, gentlemen, which attachment do you believe you resonate with based upon what we just talked about?
So I'll start to show off since I started off backstage anyway. Um, just being very transparent, I've studied attachment disorders and different things like that throughout my studies and stuff. But until this week, I hadn't really thought about them as much. When we were talking backstage, I thought that I resonated a lot with the secure attachment. But as we started talking, I probably resonate more with the anxious attachment, the desire for intimacy, anxious in relationships, feel like others are emotionally unavailable to them. But I got a question for the panel real quick before I go into it. Do you think that this is something that, maybe at one point we were at one place and then at another point in our life we were somewhere else? Because um I think the way I was early on, especially in the way my behaviors were, I think, like I said, it was probably anxious attachment. Like I was like, man, like the intimacy, the anxious in relationships. I feel like, it was just a lot of things. And I think what happened was it kind of caused me to stay in my relationship a little bit longer. You know what I mean? So do y'all kind of feel like you can kind of transition from one to another as you grow and become more aware of life in general?
I
Yes.
think, yeah, I think yes, and I think with various parental figures, you may have different issues per se.
Okay. Well, coach, you want to answer a little bit for me or
Yeah,
before I go
But
on?
before you do that, could I ask a question?
sure.
When you say that you resonate more with anxious attachment, was it that you felt like you needed somebody, but you just kept attracting people that really didn't want to be bothered with you or didn't want to allow you to open yourself up emotionally? Or is it something different? Because I kind of resonate with that one too, but in a different sense.
I felt that word felt. I'm using that intentionally. I felt
Mhm.
like at the time that I needed to be in a relationship and I needed to be with the person that I was with regardless.
Was it like you
Some
were
of it
trying to
was based
find?
off of well, some of it was based off religion, and I think some of it may have been that desire for that intimacy from someone.
Okay.
And
Because
since I was married, I thought that that was that one person, regardless of anything else, because I had that desire for intimacy. That's what I wanted, regardless.
so was it like you were trying to find what was missing outside of yourself? Or did you feel
I,
like you just had to have somebody just to feel like you were whole?
It wasn't even about being whole. I just had a need
Okay.
that I needed. I felt like I needed to have somebody. And like I
Okay.
said, I'm using those words feel on purpose. I no longer have a bunch of feelings. If I do feel about certain things, I know how to channel them and put them in the box where they need to be. But I think not just feel. So,
Okay.
but at the time I used the word feel. That's how I felt at the time.
I like it.
Well,
Going back
if
to your
Yeah,
question,
go ahead, Coach.
it just and then Chris, you can go right after me. I promise. Going back to your question, I think they were spot on. Absolutely. And keep in mind, you will not know that you have an attachment concern. Yeah, that's the word I'm gonna use right now. You will not know that you have a attachment concern or which attachment category you fall in as a child. You will never uncover it until you become adult and reflect back on your life and understand some things based upon some of the relationships that you've been in throughout your life.
Yeah. So, based off of that, and to answer the first question, which attachment do I believe I resonate with? Because I kind of needed some clarification, just because, and plus I wanted to talk it out a little bit. I would say probably right now, was probably still the anxious attachment. However, I think differently now, but just based off how I grew up in most of my life, I probably resonated with the anxious attachment. I'm not saying I think I've cleared a lot of those things up in my life. You know what I mean? But that's probably what I would probably at some point in my life related to the most.
Nice. Chris, the floor is yours, my friend.
if I had to pick one, I would pick the avoidant and dismissive attachment,
Mm,
and
serious.
not on my part. But that's why I asked you the questions that I was asking you, Unc, because the people that I used to have in my life could smell the desperation in me that I needed to have somebody else to facilitate a hole that was missing because I never had it coming up. So I, just like you, I felt like I had to stay in situations longer than I was supposed to because it was normal. So I kind of grew from that to, I went from avoidant to disorganized, which I kind of sort of think they may be the same thing, but not really. But they both end in you staying in situations longer than you're supposed to because you feel like you need somebody and you feel like you got to tolerate whatever that person gives you because you need somebody. And then that other person uses that as ammunition to say, I can just do whatever I want to run over this dude and he will always stay. And now I'm more heading towards the secure, but that didn't happen until I isolated myself from everybody. And I had, like I said last time, I had to figure out what in me was causing these kinds of interactions between me and other people. I'm not just talking relationships, I'm talking friends, I'm talking coworkers, I'm talking everywhere. It was like I was getting treated the same way and it was abusive. And I'm trying to figure out what in me is giving them the green light to do this. So yeah, I had to remove myself from everybody. And then that's when I actually started diving deep and realizing some things. And once I started changing those things, the people that were really supposed to be here showed up.
So just to add a little context, so when it comes down to disorganized, like you will get into relationships, situationships, whatever you want to call it, and if you feel that person is getting too close, you will find a way to sabotage it and push them away.
Hmm. Yeah, I've done that. I've also been victim to that too.
Hmm.
I've been that guy that facilitated a role perfectly to the point where the person thought it was too good and
Hmm.
screwed it up for the both of us. And I've also done that because it's like I said, like I keep saying, it's different, and different is scary when you haven't gone through it and you don't know what it looked like. It's scary. And so when you get scared, it's either fight or flight. I used to run a lot, but I'm old, my knees are bad, so I can't run the way that I used to. So I decided to, you know what I'm saying, tough some things out.
Literally and figuratively. Your
Yeah,
knee.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So yeah, man, it's all it. I think we all go through each stage. it just happens at different times. I've just this is like the first time that I've actually seen it put to word, and now I actually understand what they are, and I understand. Dang, I did do that. Dang, I did do that. Okay, dang, I am here. So yeah.
Well, I think for me, when we were reading them, I'm like Chris. When you put it to words and you add definitions and everything behind it, you start to see where you fall. Some people would like to put a positive light on everything or a positive spin. But when I looked at it, for myself, I would have to say the anxious. And the anxious because I recognize in my upbringing, being over sexualized at an early age because of surroundings and other peer pressures and everything like that, how I brought it into my adulthood and how I felt that if I connect with someone on an intimate level, they can understand that I care for them or that's how they care for me. And you bring that and you normalize it. So it's like, okay, if you don't do this, you don't love me. If you don't do this, it's like, hold up, that's not necessarily the proper way to start an intimate relationship just by jumping in and giving up everything. But because of where I was and my in that headspace, I normalized it and I told myself that this is what has to happen in order for me to feel love. So it was automatically, boom, if I don't get this, you don't love.
Hmm. I like it. I think I'm a lot like Chris. I think I've vacillated between all four of them. More so the last three than the top one. But then I also believe that I've had certain relationships in my life to where those relationships existed in different categories as well. So I can relate to like rolling the anxious attachment, having a desire for intimacy, but feel like others are unavailable emotionally. And I cannot tell you right now if I'm being just transparent, whether it was them unavailable or whether it was me. I know for a fact I did the avoidant and dismissive attachment, struggling with intimacy, and seeking high levels of independence, and definitely disorganized because at a certain point, especially after my divorce, I pushed. Listen, you couldn't get too close to me. I'm just going to be completely transparent. There you go. You get too close. I go, oh, time out. I'm going into hibernation for a while. Then I'll come back out. You may hear from me from a couple of months later, whatever that looks like. Here's the funny part about all of that. As I transition now into where I am, you hear I can literally see it in other people. And it's almost like you really want to have an open conversation with them, but they're not there to have that conversation. And so the only thing you can do is make another person aware of what they're doing in that particular moment and hope that they are how can I say it? They're open minded enough to accept what it is that you're saying, because those are the things that I had to do. And I can tell you for certain, and I think I probably shared this before. One of the things I used to hear all the time: you're emotionally unavailable. You don't respond the way that whatever. And then my response was like, well, is it that I don't respond, or I don't respond the way that you want me to respond? And so even though that is an accurate question to ask, once I started searching myself, I realized that, yeah, I really didn't have a response, or at least have a response to show my child that I was excited for their achievement. I thought it was like, good job. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be making A's. Get on writing and do some homework. You know what I'm saying? I joke about it now, but when I reflect, it's like, man, like, yeah, you was kind of like almost calloused. But then where does that come from, right? So once you start searching yourself and being completely transparent, I like the fact that that Roland was completely honest with his. For me, not that you guys weren't. I'm just saying. But for me, I've shared this before. Not having my dad at home. You see what I'm saying? So there's a small piece of me that's actually missing. And so I cannot get that information that only he can provide from somebody else. So with that being said, it's like I couldn't I didn't want to upset my mother by sharing certain things with her, because I think she did a fantastic job given the resources and the time frame that we existed in. But then by that same token, as a young man, and I believe every young man go through this, the absence of a father, there are questions that have to be asked, like, why? Was it, and trust me, you'll go through that phase even in your young childhood. You don't necessarily look at it as that, yeah, mom and dad is separated. No, it's like he left me. That's how kids go through it at a certain point in time. And I went through that phase. And so when I look at these things, I'm seeing me in every last one of it. So I had to be intentional about pulling myself out of that, because what I realized over the years is that you would damage good people with your bad behavior because you have never reconciled with some of these traumas that you've been through, or reconciled with the attachment that you're experiencing. So first and foremost, I want to thank you guys for sharing that, being open and honest with everybody. I want to thank you guys in the chat who've been sharing yours as well. And again, as we're asking these questions, by all means, chime in, put your responses to the questions in there. That's why I put them in the chats. I'm not forcing anybody. Of course, it's by will. And of course, we would love to welcome those to the conversation as well. And last but not least, questions, questions, questions. By all means, ask them. It's a lot of chats go up, so just make sure you started off with the word question so I can easily see it. Going back, I want to make sure I address everybody who's here. Shaking Nations with Jesus Christ. Welcome, always welcome. With a name like that, again, welcome. Nakisha Izzard, welcome to the show. Always good to see you. Let me see who else. Natasha Jones, how you doing? Good to see you. Miss Verlene McCoy, aka Queen V. Good to see you. Welcome to the show. My main man, Antoine Lyons. Good to see you, brother. Always welcome to the show. Appreciate you guys. I really appreciate you guys. Again, if this is your first time, go ahead and subscribe and share your information so that we can actually, just acknowledge you. I want to appreciate everybody, because we appreciate you guys being here, because you could be any place else, but we definitely thank you for being here. So Michelle says she struggled with anxious attachment due to being away from her biological mom and not getting a lot of love from her pop. And that's the thing. Kind of consistent with what we're talking about here. What you got, Chris?
Oh, nothing. I'm
Okay,
listening. I'm
I
listening.
thought you was
Nah, I
ready to
didn't have
chime
a.
in.
Oh no, no sir, no sir.
No, you're good. And she adds, she is diligently working at the secure attachment. Very good. That is always good to see. Lisa says that she had anxious attachment based on the definition. Thank you for sharing that. We definitely appreciate your feedback in that arena. I want to make sure I'm honoring everybody. Love it. So Natasha says anxious attachment resonates with me. Definitely appreciate that. You guys are awesome. Again, go ahead and hit the likes button. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a heart, man. We like hearts too. You know what I'm saying? Go and give us some hearts. All right. So as we progress along, I want to make sure that we go through it, because again, we just shared our where we felt we were when it comes down to attachment issues, and I'm stressing that's issues right now. And so with that being said, every last one of us had to define some type of coping mechanism. Like, you got to the point you had to cope with it as you start to navigate relationships. And this is relationships of all types. I want to make sure I'm saying that. As we started navigating the space of relationships, so you start looking at, young adolescents, you start looking at adolescent, you go into your young adult years, you start noticing a pattern of relationships. And you probably didn't get to the point of being self-aware until later, people like me in their 30s, but you probably didn't get to the point of being self-aware until later. So what I want to go into now is coping with attachment issues. So gentlemen, if you don't mind, please share your thoughts on what are some ways that a person can cope with attachment issues.
I'm gonna go extreme. Remove everybody from your life. Get away from everybody and learn how to be sufficient on your own. That is the only way to deal with attachment issues, because the feeling of always having to need somebody, and then that somebody not being there, is it's a depressing feeling, because it makes you feel like you're not worthy of having nobody around you. So you go searching for people just to be around people, and it's like, you need people. We are supposed to be a community. Like, we need people. But as a man, and I'm speaking as a man, like, standing on your own too will bring people around you to help you stand on your own too. but they have to see you doing it first. They're not just gonna give it to you. So I my method was isolation. I got away from everybody. I got away from everybody. And when I got away from everybody, those people that were supposed to be there and the people that I didn't know that were supposed to be there showed up.
Hmm.
Two things
I
can't occupy the same space at the same time. That's the law of physics. So if I have a bunch of people around me just to have people around me, but they're not helping me progress and I can't give anything to them to help them progress, why are they even there? So just remove them. So when you remove them, you make space for the people that's supposed to be there.
I would like
So
to
yeah,
ask you a
I isolated
question.
myself from everybody.
I would like to ask you
Hmm?
a question. You made
Go
mention
for it.
of need. You use the word need when you need
Hmm.
people. What do you mean when you use that term?
Just to have somebody around. You understand what I'm saying? Most people don't know how to be by themselves. Most people don't even know themselves. So if you don't even know who you are and you don't even know how to deal with yourself, what makes you think other people want to be around you? And what makes you think you can actually be helpful to other people? Yeah, I had to figure that out myself. Like I always wanted to be around people. I always wanted to be in the scene. I always wanted to be with all the cool kids. And like I said, they could smell the desperation on me. And so they were like, nah, man, we cool. You're not gonna do anything but take from the group and you're not gonna add anything to it. You just want to be around.
Hmm.
Like they saw it. So it was like, okay, well, if they see it, maybe I need to take a step back and look at what they see, figure out what they see, and maybe I could change some things. And I just started making the changes.
I like it.
I think for me, I agree with you. Have to separate yourself, isolate yourself, and find yourself. But I think for me, and a lot of people like me, I had children early on, so I couldn't just go off in mountains like Martin did and then come back. But I couldn't do that.
When he went monk mode.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But he only had half his hair done though. That was
yeah,
the only
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
I had responsibilities. So, but I think when you identify first, identify that there is an issue with why you are, because some people take things like everybody was talking about anxious and they talk about physical intimacy and everything like that. And a lot of people can't relate. And we get labels. You say, oh, she's a hoe. Oh, he's this. She's promiscuous. But there's a underlining cause to them being that way. And when
Absolutely.
you don't identify, you just gonna use the common vernacular and label it something without looking for an actual cause. Because when you find a cause, you can treat it. You can't treat the label. See, and that's where I think where the
Mm.
problem lies. Because when you identify something, now we can treat it. Now we can dialogue. Now we can find solutions to this problem instead of just saying what we think it is or the disparaging remarks that we call it. So I think identification and actually sitting down, you one has to be real with themselves. Have a heart to heart with yourself. Say, man, at one point I had to say, man, I'm a no good dude. When it comes to treating people, how you treat people. Yeah, I treat my family cool, but everybody else, nah. And I literally, because I was so emotionally unaware and emotionally drained, I didn't have feelings for nobody. And it was to the point where I was like, man, am I a doggone sociopath? I mean, I literally was like that, like, man, because I had no concerns. Like, you could sit up there, accident, get your head chopped off. Like, okay, what's on channel
Meh.
two? What we eat? And that's how disconnected I was. So I had to come to grips with myself so that I could sit up there and start to work on me.
Hmm.
Yeah, I wrote a couple of things down. You said some, and I was trying to just pick up one, but I couldn't. So I ended up writing down five because I just kept toggling between, different thoughts in my head as I listened to Chris, as I listened to Roland, and the other things about the conversation. So if I'm looking at some of the ways that a person can cope with attachment issues, one I put in there in no order. It was just stuff I was writing down in my notes while we were having the conversation is one, I think that people need to seek some sort of therapy. And like I mentioned before on this show, therapy, not big mama, not auntie, not the person down the street. Yes, it's okay, I think, to have conversation with these people and talk to them. You know what I mean? However, that's not where the bulk of your information should go, and that's not where you should be looking for um the best help from. I'm not saying that those people can't help you. However, those people hadn't been trained. They don't necessarily have the skills to deal with certain things when you talk to them about certain things that you may be going through. So one was seek therapy. Another one was self-care. Like, you have to take care of yourself. And that's kind of goes back to what Chris was talking about, I think, when you talk about going deep. When you going in deep, you closing everybody out, like you're looking for that self-care. You're looking on how you can improve. And then that goes along with the whole self-reflection piece, is one that I got written down here too, is you have to be able to self-reflect. You have to go back and look at the past. I'm not talking about 50 years ago, but we talked about it before. One of the ways that we get over things is, especially in relationships, is seeing what you have done in the relationship. What did you cause? What was your fault in a relationship as to why it got dissolved? Not just the other person. Another one is, I think you still have to continue on working and building connections with people, because you have attachment issues. And anytime you have any type of issue, the only way you know that you can overcome those issues is that you have to be put in situations where you can see that you have actually overcome. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I'm just assuming, if you're an alcoholic, the only way you know you're really over it is to be put in a situation where you have to make the choice on whether or not you're going to take that drink or not. So I think it's the same thing. And then lastly, I'm sorry I've been too long, is you have to be patient with yourself. Dealing with any type of an issue that you have, if you're trying to grow, in most cases, unless the spirit hits you and say you're done, boom, bam, it's it. Most of the time, it's going to be a process, and you have to understand that there are going to be ups and down as you go through the process. So, I think it's very important to be patient with yourself as well. So, I'll just run them off real quick. Seek therapy, self care, work on building connections, be patient with yourself, and self reflect.
Man, that was good. That was good. I mean, in conjunction with what Chris and Roland said, that was kind of perfect synopsis of all of that. I think for me, I did a lot of those things, but it wasn't because I planned it out. I want to be completely transparent. I had no earthly idea of the blueprint to fix the mess that I got myself in. But I knew I was in a pickle because at the end of the day, I started looking around me and other people were thriving in relationships. And for me, I was thriving with being lonely. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying lonely to the point that I felt like I always needed somebody. Like, I enjoyed being alone, not from the standpoint of like I'm excited to go home or excited to be in my personal space. No, I was alone, but it was also to the point to where it's like, yeah, I see these people, they're married, they have children, and they're enjoying spending family time together and so forth and so on. And when I was married, none of that happened. Like, yeah, we did go places, but it was almost like we went places because it was the right thing to do. It wasn't that we went
Mm.
places because we wanted to go places. Like, I was that person on Saturdays. Like, I thought Saturdays for me in my mind was family time. So we get up, do household chores early. I'm at the gym as soon as the doors open. I get my workout in. I leave the gym. I'm coming home. I'm diving in the shower, going to hit the kitchen and eat real quick. And by that time, I'm, kind of doing whatever it was I was responsible for doing, like cleaning the kitchen and mopping the floor, whatever. And then by 1 o'clock, we need to be in the truck riding out. That was my thought.
So
However,
it was like obligation.
yeah, absolutely. And so that's kind of like my point. Like, I believe, only because I experienced it myself, I believe a lot of times in relationships, what you see, they look like they're enjoying themselves and they're vibrant as a family, but it could be the facade that they put on for everybody else to see, because I know for a fact that's what we did. Like, literally, I used to compartmentalize better than anybody I've ever seen in my life. We could get in an argument before I leave to go to work, and I'll take that argument and put it on the shelf, put my phone on silent for the rest of the day, and I go to work and I come home by 7 p.m. And at 7 p.m. we pick right up where we left off from. That's not a relationship, bro. And so I got to the point of like this, I would sit, like I would isolate myself in my own house. like go sit in the corner and just get quiet. And the kids every time they come by, they say, "What's up, Dad? What's up?" And so that's kind of like how I would do. But then moving forward, I realized, and I didn't get to this point until after I filed for divorce. That's when I went into isolationism, because when I went to therapy, she said, I don't believe at that particular point in time, she's like, I don't believe you have PTSD, but I do believe you have some serious anger issues. And so I was like, me? I think we talked about this previously. I was like, me angry? She said, yeah. She said, now what I will tell you is that you actually have a reason to be angry, but you have to find a way to deal with it. And so what I realized is that the environment that made me angry, notice what I just said, made me, right? The environment that made me angry was not going to be the environment that helped me to get over this anger issue that I was experiencing. So that's when I got to the point of isolation. When I came back from Korea, I went straight to the lawyer office. I gave my retainer fee. We filled out some paperwork. I went home. I said, "Hey, here we go. This is happening for real." That's where I was at with it. And so afterwards, 2 days later, I packed my truck and rode off into the sunset. At that point, that's when I got to the point where I could sit alone with my thoughts, thinking about what I'm thinking about, metacognition. Now I'm getting to the point where I'm realizing, like, yeah, I'm not going to blame them or blame her or anyone else. I need to fix me. What is it about me that attracted that person to me? What is it about me that created this environment that I'm existing in? And so once I got to that point, I said, okay, well, yeah, I need to fix this. I need to fix this. And then I started having necessary conversations. Me and my mother, I mean, fantastic. We would have conversations, and they weren't easy, but they were necessary. And it wasn't so much about me crying and her not picking me up, right? But it was just like, hey, can you share this with me? Can we talk about this? Can we talk about that? So we would just have honest conversation. And unfortunately, I will also say, like, life is happening at the same time. So I'm seeing these things in other people as well. So now I can look at what is actually happening. I can go back and consider what it is I'm thinking about. And then from that point on, uh, I could get to the point where I'm like, okay, now I'm understanding more. So I did the therapy, I did the isolation, I did the self-reflecting, and then I got to the point of putting it in practice, trial and error. And I stress the point about trial and error because you don't necessarily have the blueprint, like literally off the top of your head, just by self-reflecting on how to do a thing when you realize you were doing the thing wrong all before. And so now that's how I got to the point of coping. Now, transparency, prior to that, I would cope at the bottom of a bottle of Ciroc. Just being completely honest. Every weekend, I would go to the store, come back with 2 bottles, and by the weekend over, both of those bottles was empty. That was like my SOP. Seriously, bro, because I couldn't
That's
grasp.
scary.
It is scary, but I couldn't grasp what was going on in my head. And the sad part about it is I used to work out so much, I never looked like I drank that much. But that's just being transparent. And you will be surprised how many people mask their pain by drinking. I can't stress that enough. It's
That's
okay. I'm
smoking
not saying,
weed.
well, that too. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing to drink. It's a bad thing to drink excessively. Anything you do in excess is not good for you. And that's where I was at. That's how I realized, well, it's another situation as well. Me and my uncle got into it and almost, ripped them apart. Because then all I did is live in the gym. And so I had a friend of mine tell me, say, you need to go see somebody. And so that's when I got into PTSD counseling. And I scored so high on the scale, he took me in just like that. Oh, yeah. Yeah. He came out of his office after I took my test. He said, I need you to come with me now. So
Sheesh.
that was me. But again, it was stockpiling complex, like we talked about last week, complex trauma, right? Stockpile on top of stockpile on top of stockpile, and never getting to the point of resonating with any of it. That's a very dangerous game. So when we start talking coping, there are healthy ways to cope, and then there are unhealthy ways to cope. When you see a person who is coping with some type of pain, trauma, or whatever in an unhealthy manner, that is literally a cry for help. I can't stress that enough. So that's how I actually did it. Um, Man, you guys are going to town over here, and I want to make sure I go back because somebody asked a question. I seen it. There it is. So I want to make sure, like I said, if you ask questions, I'm gonna bring it to the flat platform. Just make sure you put question up there so I know that's what it is. So where do you guys stand now? Are you healed or still healing, if I may ask? I want to start this off because I think everybody is in a constant state of healing. I don't think you ever get to the point of healed because your memories still exist, right? You cannot erase your memories. However, comma, what I will say is that as you start considering those things that you've been into, I think Uncle Junior said it. The only way that you know that you've been delivered from a thing is by being exposed to that thing that once had you handicapped so that you can see where you're at in that deliverance trail. So, with that being said, I would say that I am healed from a lot of things, but healing is a constant process. You never get to the point of being completely healed because every situation is different. And so, just like, say, for example, I was told that I had anger issues. Well, now I'm a pretty mild mannered guy. Like, it takes a lot to get me heated. But trust and believe, you hit that right button, that old person wakes up. And I can go from here to here, but I try my best to ensure that that doesn't happen. So I found ways to say, you know what? Let me put myself in a timeout because if this conversation continue, it will not be nice.
I'm y'all know how I feel about these buzzwords, but I'm gonna take a stab at this. If you're asking if we are healed in a sense of are we not allowing what happened in our lives to control our present, then I'm gonna say yes. I'm healed in that aspect, but I am always angry because it always plays in my mind. And there's always something that reminds me of it. I am pissed off all the time. But I understand that me being angry is not going to be a productive way to move on with my life. So I decided to aim that anger at something that'll help me build my life to be better. I acknowledge it. Yes, I am pissed off 24/7 because there's always something that reminds me of the abuse that I used to take and the low self esteem that I used to have. So, do I allow it to control me? No. Do I feel it and acknowledge it? You're damn right. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Man, healed but still healing. I think it is a process, but I think when we, or when I start to notice one thing, I think we will think the obvious traumas, the obvious triggers are what we need to, once we get over this hump, is healed. But I think as you start the process, you start to identify that, man, I had an issue with this and I compensated or overcompensated with that. And you start to see there, it's like you are unraveling a blanket. So once you pull a thread, it just loosens up other things that you identify with and say, man, I have a lot to work on. So it's a continuing thing. And something, even when we'll go scripture, when Jesus asked the woman, he said, will thou be made whole? He didn't answer, will she be healed? Because when you can be healed from one thing and not another. So I think that we should always be looking to grow, and until we leave this earth, we're going to be in a constant state of growth or depression. And that's one of those things, like sometimes you're going to get like Chris, he say he mad all the time, or because of when he think, when his mind takes him back. You will always have memories, you will always have those things, but it's how you deal with them, how you cope with them. And I'm like Dwayne said, he used to drink the Ciroc. I used to drink just to go to sleep. I
Mm.
used to put brown liquor and I would act like it was tea in a little water bottle. And I'd be sitting up there drinking brown liquor in my garage and then go to sleep because I didn't want to deal with the demons that were messing with my mind per se. So that's what I would do. That was a coping mechanism with me. So I
That
think we all got to go through our own ordeals, and having like-minded brothers who can identify things and who can actually you can talk to and be real with and get over these things, and they can say, hey bro, I got your back. Accountability partners are key.
That's so scary to hear that.
Oh, bro, I'm telling you, the layers are real, especially when you start talking about back-to-back deployments, seeing your friends, yeah. It
That's
those
scary.
layers of trauma, there is real.
I mean,
Yeah.
and to hear you two talk about how you dove into a bottle. I think that's the part that scares me the most, because alcoholism runs in my family, which is why I don't really drink that much, because I saw how it destroyed my biological father. I saw how it destroyed my half brother. Like, that's scary. Like, and this is the part that people just don't understand. And this is the part that people just disregard when it comes to men as a whole. Like, we deal with stuff and nobody cares. You understand what I'm saying? And to hear that some of the coping mechanisms that we used to have were destructive at first, and then we progress from destroying ourselves to building ourselves up, and the process in between. Man, listen, let me stop.
Well, I'll say this. Back in 1993, when I graduated high school and I went to college, and one Sunday we were playing and flag football out there, and I skinned my knee. I still have that scar to this day. I still have the memory. I remember some of the guys who we were playing with. However, that scab or scar on my knee no longer hurts. So if I'm asking this question, I'm kind of like where coach is. I think that I have healed from a lot of things. I think some of those scars and memories are there. However, they don't control my life. They don't determine if I'm going left or right. They don't do any of that. And I think that, as you grow and, so coach made a good point earlier about how we don't know that, we experience some of this trauma until we become adults or whatever like this. And then we go back and look. Same thing. I didn't know that I experienced a certain level of trauma in my marriage, my first marriage, until after I got out of it. I got some glimpse of it while I was in it, but I didn't really understand the effects of that and how that was going to affect me going forward into this relationship until I had to reflect back on different things and different behaviors and stuff that I was exhibiting in my first marriage that I brought over into this relationship because of some trauma and because of some different things that went on in the first relationship. So I think that I am healed from a lot of things. And like coach said, I'm continuing to heal on other things. I believe that it's an ongoing process and that you continue to grow and you continue to heal on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Go ahead, bro.
See, I think we all can talk about how we've been affected by things, but I don't think we talk about it enough how we are the people that cause our loved ones trauma.
That
Because
too.
I always speak about how, because I didn't grow up getting hugs and I thought it was okay. You ain't got to hug nobody. You just should know I love you. So I wasn't affectionate with my children. So I had to apologize later on. And now I make sure I ensure I hug my kids, I hug my grandkids, I let them know that I love them. I'm affectionate with them. Even the boys, I tell you, I kiss my boys. I pick them up, give them a hug, give them a kiss, tell them I love them because I didn't receive it, and I don't want my excuse for having that trauma to be theirs when they get my age. To be, well, I don't know how to show love. I don't know how to do this, that, and the other. Because I think in our community, it's a taboo almost for a man. What you kissing that boy for? Because that's my baby. That's why I'm showing him that you can have a relationship with another person and it be non-sexual and still share in that space.
Great point. I'm glad you said that because you're absolutely right. It's an old saying, hurt people, right? And I think that's one of the things that we have to understand. When you don't necessarily deal with the trauma that's in your life, the only thing you do is pass that trauma on to the people that you influence. So as you start having children because you're looking for somebody to love you unconditionally, the only thing you're doing is injecting that level of trauma into that young individual that's going to grow up and be somebody's boyfriend or girlfriend, and they in turn is going to actually end up doing the same thing in return. So we got to realize it is a it is a perpetual cycle that actually helping. It actually happens. I had an old commander. He used to call it a self-licking ice cream cone. Right. That's exactly that's exactly what it is. It just keeps happening and happening and happening until somebody is brave enough to say, you know what, the buck stops here with me, and go through some of these healthy coping mechanisms. So thank you for that question, Christina. That was an amazing question, by the way. And you did not ruffle any feathers. Like, we are open, we're transparent, and trust me, we don't mind sharing because at the end of the day, we're not embarrassed by any of this anymore. So that's why I don't mind sharing that off. So thank you again. Lisa said, for me, it was placing myself around positive people and making sure I spent time alone examining myself. That's how she coped. Natasha said, I learned that I was coping by becoming numb. Good point. I'm glad she said that because that actually happens as well. You literally become numb to relationships in general. It's been difficult. It's been a difficult road to learn how to start to truly express emotions or real. I think Natasha might be my sister, man. She is telling my story right now. I can fake it, but to experience with it, it's been real hard. It's been hard. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Very, very great. Very insightful. Um, Let me say. Queen V says, beware of people bearing false witness. Sometimes things are not what they appear to be. They show you what they want. Yeah, absolutely. Man, you have no idea. You are absolutely right. Spot on. Great to see you, Liz. Good to see you as always. Welcome to the show. Let me see. I want to make sure I'm catching. I seen I think I seen my man in the chat. So um there you go. Bold and Driven EP. There
Oh,
you
he
go.
over here
Welcome
today.
to the
My
show.
dude,
Huh? Yeah.
my guy right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome to the show. Next question. All right,
Hey, real
Natasha.
quick, Coach.
Yep, I'm sorry.
I just want to say something real quick that I saw in the chat. Let me roll up real quick. I think it was from I just moved it. Lisa Keys. She said one coping technique I used was silent. I thought I was helping calm the environment, but discovered it was avoidance and hurting myself more. So I think that's really important. Sometimes we don't understand some of the behavior that we do and how it can, like we were talking about layers, it can just be a layer on top of something else. So I thought that was a really good point.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that was next, man. No, I'm joking. All right,
Okay.
so
Oh, was it? Oh.
yeah, no, you're good. All right, so Natasha asked, how do you deal with people bringing up the old you when you've made an effort to be a better version of yourself? I started off the last question, so gentlemen, have at it.
I
I ain't gonna
removed
go,
them
but I
from
will
my
say
life.
this. I got a good one, a good short of Roland answering this question right there. I don't know if you remember it, but
This morning?
no, it was a few weeks ago, maybe last month sometime.
Oh, I thought you were talking about something I wrote this morning because I got on a
Oh
tangent
no.
this morning on Facebook. I think one. Let me see how I can say this.
Say it with your
Anybody that
chest.
likes to, anybody that likes to throw the old you back in your face to try to correct you, you need to slowly remove them out of your space. I don't need you. That's like taking a pamper and taking it to the baby and say, "See what you done did?" Constantly. After you don't even use the pampers no more. So when you got to treat me like I'm a child, when you got to constantly throw things up in my face, what it is, it's a trauma and a trigger for you, not for me. So it's you that needs some work because I've done my work. I'm past that, and I refuse to allow somebody to hold me to my past, especially after I've moved. Once I move, I'm done with it. Now, I'm gonna ever be for. I don't want to be so non. I want to be have some compassion. So if you are experiencing something, we could talk. But if you're gonna constantly throw it up at me, go and do that over there. Go in the backyard and yell, chop a tree down or something. But I'm not gonna stay in that space.
You are a better one than me. I don't feel no compassion for people to do that, because the people that do that are only doing that because you are making them uncomfortable and they can't see you that way. So they have to constantly bring up the old you because the old you is what made them comfortable. Screw all of that.
Well,
No.
Chris, what I'm talking about, Chris, like if say you're in a relationship with someone and you did something in the relationship, now you can't just say, well, just get over it, because that takes time. That's what I'm saying with that. Like if you did
Like I
something.
said, you are a better one than me, because if you talk in relationships and we already hashed this out and you bring it up later,
Now I'm saying,
no,
see, you can say it's hashed out, but that person has to actually get over it also.
then quit lying to me and let's get over it. Quit lying to me and saying, okay, I'm over it, just to have that little, just to have that in your back, in the back of your head, just in case just in case I bring up something that you did, so you can throw it back in my face to make what you did less than, you know what I'm saying? No, I'm not doing it. If we actually we have, listen, nah, I don't feel no compassion for people that constantly bring up my past like I can't grow up. You understand what I'm saying? Like I'm dealing with this right now. People still look at me like I'm the same dude I was 20 years ago. I'm like, are you serious? Get out of my face, man. No, nah, man. This ain't high school. This ain't college, man. I'm a completely different person. And if you can't see that in me and actually celebrate that in me, then walk that way, because I'm not about to keep going back to where you feel like I should be, because you not comfortable with the growth that I did. Like I said last time, Deion Sanders said it best, man. Don't let my success activate your insecurities. I grew up. I'm not the same dude I was when you knew me oh so long ago. Get out my face with that. No, you're not about to hold me there. Like, this is not happening, because I put in too much work to get to where I am. And I'm not about to shrink myself down to where you were better than me to make you feel better. Get out my face. No, I don't have any sympathy or any compassion for people to do that. That's selfish. I'm sorry. I was about to curse.
So for me, how do I deal with people bringing up the old you when you've made efforts to be a better version of yourself? No one brings up the old version of me in my life right now. Um, those people who would do those things, they're not part of my life. In the past, when those people were part of my life, I would probably at some point get combative and try to prove that I wasn't like that. However, with age and with time and with maturity and understanding in life, I decided that those people were no longer worthy of my energy. So, if that's the idea of the old Garfield, the old Uncle Junior is the person that you still want to connect to, I've moved on. I've grown up. I'm a better person today than I was in 93, than I was in 2003, than I was in 2013. And I plan on being a better person in 2033. So the people like this who bring up things, they have, for the most part, navigated their self out of my life. I don't have time for people's negative energy, and I don't have time for people who want to focus on the old person and the old things that I used to be. Because we all have a past, we have all done things, and now, and I look at you. If you are still holding on to that, that's your problem. That's a you thing. That ain't got nothing to do with me. So, and I do think that at sometimes I'm just going to be real. I think sometimes it's easier said than done, and I'll be honest, because sometimes these people are our brothers, they're our sisters, they're our cousins, they're our mothers, they're our fathers. There are people who are going to be in our life for a long time. So when it comes to those people, I just limit the amount of time that I spend with them. Maybe bring it up. Oh, I remember when you used to do this, do this, do this. I'm like, have you talked to me in the last 8 years when I haven't been doing this, this, or this? You know, see what I'm doing now. Why are you still holding on to stuff from 8 years ago? Why are you still back there? Why haven't you grown? Why is this such an important topic for you 8 years down the road? So I'm like, Chris, that's all I got to say about that.
So I'm gonna play devil. So first and foremost, I agree 100%. But I also want to kind of inject another thought as well. I also believe that sometimes some people, they kind of fast forward themselves to the position that they think they want to be at without necessarily doing the work on themselves to be there. So I wouldn't be totally dismissive, right? I think this is a great opportunity for self-reflection. Now, as I observe my own behavior and I don't see any of this that exists in me, then the next time this comes to the table, then I respond like these gentlemen do, right there. I think you're viewing me through the lens of the memory of who I used to be, not necessarily through the behavior that I exhibit right now. And so when you look at it, I think conversation, relationships per se, is a great metric to understanding where you are. I always talk about, people like to talk about storms. I'm going through a storm, right? I say it all the time. Storms, they're like blessings in disguise, right? We focus too many times on the storm itself. But what you have to understand, the storm reveals itself in your life so that you can be revealed where you are. That's the main reason for a storm. So if somebody is presenting something in your life, presenting a behavior, presenting an atmosphere, whatever the case may be, that's a great opportunity to reflect and look at yourself. Even if this isn't a true statement, that still means that I need to self-reflect to see how I behave according to this statement. Again, if I don't see it, then next time it comes up, yeah, I don't think that's the true statement. I actually considered it, and I didn't see any of that what you're saying. And then that can be a great way of a helping conversation for a friend. But if I observe what that person is actually saying, now the responsibility is on me. I have to continue to do the work and pull the weeds out my garden. That's the thing. So again, Natasha, great question, and I hope that we fully answered that question and kind of and kind of gave you a way to look at that. Because again, they're right. If you have people in your circle that is constantly reminding you of who you were 10 years ago, that person probably shouldn't be in your circle. It's time to find some new friends. Um, Man, let me see. Somebody, I really, this is why we do what we do, by the way. I want to make sure I say that. This is the reason why we do what we do, because I think it's necessary and important for us to understand that we literally go through the same things. They just look different, right? We
I
have
would,
some, go ahead.
I would, I wouldn't say we. Actually, you know what? I take that back. You know what, Coach? You're right. We do deal with the same thing. The problem is the men's side of it is the side of it that people just now decided that they wanted to care about, which is why you're starting to see more of it.
Hmm. Great point. So Liz says, I am numb to this very day. I hope I didn't miss a previous comment statement that she made. But she said, I'm numb to this very day, but I am the most empathetic human being around who feels everyone's emotions. So Liz says she is an empath. Trust me, that is yeah, that's a real deal. And I'll be honest with you, I think most of us, for the most part, unless we're in that position, like we were talking about earlier when we started talking about these attachment issues, I think most people, for the most part, experience being an empath at one point in time or another. Listen, again, thank you for everybody who is actually in this conversation today, not just a panel, but all you guys in the chats, man. I see what you guys are doing, and it is amazing. Keep the questions coming. As you're seeing, we're not running from any of it, and we pray that we're adding value as we go through this conversation. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Queen V said, well, hold on, I'm skip one. Antoine said, if they can't embrace it, I'm gonna keep going. I believe I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. Keep it moving. Queen V says she kisses her grandchildren every chance she gets so that they will someday be able to show the same kind of love. I love it. Be the example of that love. Uh-oh. Miss Jordan, sometimes people bring up the past because they have unresolved issues.
See, that's what Uncle Junior and myself were saying. You
Mama
bringing
said
up the
it.
past because you
It's
still
over.
in your feelings. Get out your feelings.
Absolutely.
I'm a different person.
I think
Absolutely.
that's a lot of it. Honestly, like in my experience, I think that's a lot of it.
It
And this is no
is.
disrespect to even the people who, I graduated almost 30 years ago. Like
Man, you
people
all.
still talk about high school. High school was fun, not for me as much, but high school was high school. But it's like, what have you done since high school? It's like, bro, it was cool, but and it's just like the same thing with this. Like, what have you been doing for the last 10 years? Like to where you still see me as, little Private Martin. You know what I mean? Just coming into the army, getting drunk off of what was I drinking in? What was that stuff?
Old Bumpy.
No, what was the drink back in the early 90s? We used to
Old
drink
Bumpy, man. That's Seagram's. Gin.
I have no idea.
Yeah, we was on Seagram's gin hard though.
He was drinking
But
Cisco or Crazy Horse or something like that.
no, what's the Mad Dog?
Oh my
That was
God,
that was
that's
the
I've
the
80s.
heard of
'80s and
that.
'70s. All right, listen. We ain't gonna go down drinking memory lane. All right,
Yeah,
we're
let's
gonna
don't do that.
we're gonna keep moving. So when it comes down to like coping with some of these issues, like we kind of want to look at it from a problem solving perspective. So when we start looking at it, first and foremost is understanding. So you want to understand your attachments. Listen, I say again, everybody has attachments, right? You have to go back and do a real stern self reflection on your life. Look at your past relationships. Look at how you behaved in a relationship. Understand some of the things that triggered you, right? So when it comes down to it, each person has an attachment style. Do work to acknowledge yours and how it may have developed. With that being said, gentlemen, what are some concerns with understanding your attachment style? What are some concerns with understanding your attachment style?
I think a concern would be to isolate yourself to one way of doing something where you say, well, I got to do it this way, or this the only way I learn, or this the once you start focusing on one, I think you start to leave other avenues of approach by the wayside, which may be beneficial to you. So I think you need to leave yourself open to any and all type of help because like some people are they are against medicine totally, but medicine is beneficial. All medicine may not be. But I think when it comes to this approach, you got to make sure that you're open. Once you stay honest with yourself, you have to be honest in all facets. You can't just be honest with what you want to be honest with.
I was writing down one, and mine is I wrote down a concern could be your lack of awareness. I think that lack of awareness mean you may not understand how that your attachment style, how it's affecting your current relationship. If you're not aware that, hey, I'm this way because of that, I think you can get yourself into a lot of trouble in relationships. I think we talked about it behind stage. I want to make sure, but we talked about, I think one of the examples that were brought up was, hey, at 12 years old, I am being promiscuous with my body, right? And I know Coach, Roland probably gonna send me a private chat about the way I pronounced that, but that's okay.
Hmm.
But but it's like, okay, at 12 years old, you're out there, doing what you're doing. You ain't laying in your mama's bed when you're supposed to be in work. You laying in the bed with your girlfriend at 12 years old. Well, because of the situation that you were in, because your parents maybe not being there or what they may have allowed you to do, now you're acting out behaviors that you wouldn't have had you not been in that situation. So I think sometimes just a lack of awareness and how you not knowing or not understanding the attachment phase that you may be going through is definitely affecting your behaviors and how you navigate life.
I want to kind of jump in on that because I like where you guys are going. I think sometimes we can have a false sense of reality. And I think that's really an issue when we can't see reality and accept for reality for what it is. Let's be completely honest. We've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. There is no such thing as a perfect parent. I want to make sure I'm stressing it. However, this notion that a person may have in their head that their parent has done the right thing, they did everything they were supposed to do, and all this other great stuff. Well, you may struggle with actually reflecting and realizing that mom and daddy did some things wrong. So, a false sense of reality will prevent you from coming to the point of understanding your attachment style simply because you don't want to be that person that says mama or daddy did something wrong. It is not a shotgun blast to them at all. There is no such thing as a perfect parent. There's no such thing as a perfect person, period. So when we understand that, I think when we can get to the point of being completely honest with ourselves, and this is one of my things, like you have to learn to be honest with yourself before you can be honest with anybody else. So until you can get to the point of being completely honest with yourself and realizing that, you know what, everybody that I've been through in my life ain't wrong. I need to understand that these are different perspectives of me. Like these are my blind spots that either I am not resonating with or I just can't see myself, period, point blank. And so a lot of times what we do is we reject information that somebody gives us. So when it comes down to it, a person's inability to have a keen sense of reality can prevent them from understanding their attachment style.
You in deep thought over there, Chris?
Can you see it?
Actually, yeah, because I, I'm trying to figure out a way to say this. Because if you're talking about concerns of understanding your attachment style, I think the only concern would be whether your attachment style, what has your attachment style gotten you? And is your attachment style conducive to where you want to go?
Hmm.
That would be the base level concern that I would start with. And if it isn't, figure out A, why you have this attachment style, and B, how to move out of that attachment style to us to an attachment style that to an attachment style that isn't one out of scarcity. You understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Don't just have people around because you're scared to be alone. And I think that's a lot of people, and that was me.
Mm.
I didn't want to be alone. I have abandonment issues.
Did you know that at the time?
I didn't know it until I pulled myself out of it and isolated myself. That's why I started with isolation being the key. I had to pull myself this is why I am the way that I am. I pulled myself out of the way that I was and I looked at it objectively. I didn't look at it with me in it. I just looked at it and said, this is what it is. Why are you like this? And then that's when I noticed certain trends. And I noticed that those certain trends weren't in line with the man that I wanted to become. So I started changing the trend. It's hard, it's difficult. Like I said, man, all of this stuff that we're talking about, because we're talking about childhood trauma manifesting in adulthood, which means that you've been dealing with this since you were a kid and you were an adult. So it's like doing something completely different. But your body is so used to you doing this one thing that your body thinks something is wrong when you change the trend.
Mm.
It's literally like tearing off an arm. I used to have exactly. I used to have nightmares that I used to have nightmares where I would delete myself. Seriously. And I used to have them a lot because I was going through a lot of changes. And then I actually looked it up and I said, and when I looked it up, I actually understood that those nightmares are actually a good thing, because when you have those nightmares where you're deleting yourself, is basically saying that you're tearing apart something that you've been attached to for so long and you're building something new. So it's like the death of the old, what you used to do. So that's how I take them now. I still have them because I'm still constantly changing and I'm still constantly doing things differently. And I think that's another one of the concerns that you have to deal with when you find out what attachment style that you have, and then you actually see that your attachment style isn't conducive to you growing as a person. You have to understand all of the things that go into that, all of the changes that your body's going to go through, all of the thoughts that come into your head, all of the. I can go on. I really could.
Coach, I got a couple minutes to add something else.
Yeah.
I think another thing is that some concerns, and if we was in the military, you guys may be able to relate to it, and that's stigma that comes along with it. If you have a certain attachment style, and you're living a certain type of way, to go to deal with it sometimes, it can cause a certain amount of stigma. It's like, man, so I think sometimes because of the stigma, people may be somewhat hesitant to go out and seek that support, and get that understanding of really how that attachment is really affecting them.
Yeah, I love that point you brought up, and you're absolutely right. And keep in mind, everybody, as you're listening, we're going through a problem-solving metric now, right? So we want to be careful as we're talking about this. We're not trying to jump to the end right now, right? You have to clearly identify the problem before you can work to the point of coming to a solution, or getting to the point of implementation. And that's why so much like what Natasha says here. She says understanding enough so that implementation of corrective behaviors can be successful. I love that response, because sometimes what we do is we chase the carrot on the stick, right? We get one notion of one thing, we formulate an opinion, and we just go with it. Like, you are probably the most complicated vessel that you're ever going to have to understand. So with that being said, take enough time so that you can come to that level of understanding. I love it. Lisa says that how the attachment style may have affected those close to you. Man, I love this right here, because when you understand your previous behaviors, right, and we call them maladaptive behaviors, your previous behaviors have hurt and damaged other people, then this is a sign of compassion, not just for yourself, but also for other people as well. So she said that would be a concern that she considers. So I greatly appreciate you saying that. MJ, welcome to the show. Always good to see you. Understanding your attachment style will bring you back to the past where it all started. And that's how we move forward, by understanding the why. And understanding the why is the key. A lot of times we stop at the what. So with understanding the why, Liz, I see you. I don't want you to think I ignore you, but I got your points. I'm going to bring them up here shortly, though. Understanding the why is important. That's why we have to identify patterns in the midst of that, right? So identifying patterns, reflect on your past relationships to discover patterns and trends that have happened throughout your life. Therefore, with that being said, gentlemen, when it comes down to identifying those patterns, what are some potential roadblocks with clearly identifying patterns and trends?
I think sometimes we don't want to listen to people who have damaged us but know us, because they can see where either they have damaged us or where they see themselves as a damaged person in our actions.
So you're talking from an advice perspective.
Right.
Okay.
I I think, what's the word? So I'm gonna go with subjectivity.
Make
I
it make
think,
sense, sir.
all right. I think when we start interpreting those different patterns and trends, they can be very subjective. And I think that when you're trying to communicate and you're trying to talk to somebody about these different things, I'm trying to talk it out in my brain. I kind of got it here, but I haven't put it all together yet, because even though I saw the question, I didn't focus on it. So come back to me
Okay.
once I finish. Come back to me once I finish. I pulled the trigger too fast.
I got you.
I hadn't completely figured out of my thought process yet. So I'll be here for it. I'm
Very
gonna
well.
manage it and try to listen at the same time.
Chris, you got something, or you want me to go ahead and go?
I'm going to say one of the potential roadblocks with clearly identifying patterns and trends is having the will to break the trend.
Hmm.
You have this. Listen, man, breaking harmful patterns in your life that you have been doing all your life might be the hardest thing that you do in your life. How difficult, think about how difficult it is to break a habit that you've been doing every day. It's like a part of you. That's why I said there's so many things that happens to your body when you do that. Your body doesn't know what you're doing. Your mind does, but your body doesn't react the same way. Your body thinks that something is wrong when you stop doing the same thing that you've been doing over and over again, until you build the resiliency to do it. And a lot of people don't want to go through that. It's painful. And I
I like
think
it.
one of those roadblocks is that, like I said last time, We don't know how to take pain. And pain is necessary for growth sometimes, especially when we're having a conversation like this. Trauma as a child is painful, and dealing with it hurts too. But like Roland said earlier, it's like muscle memory. Once you start doing it and you keep doing it, your body will start remembering that you can do it. And then you start getting used to it, and then it starts getting easier. But taking that initial step, that's the roadblock in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I got a little bit of it. So I'm looking at it like this. Let me move forward a little bit. So I'm looking at the potential roadblock. I'm using an example, not a real example. So I'm having some sort of adult attachment issue, and it stems from a relationship that I had with my mother or father as a child. Now that I'm adult, I'm trying to address it because I want to get better. I'm talking, I'm seeking a therapist, and the therapist says, hey, you know what? Maybe it'd be a good idea to you address and bring some of these things up with your mom or your dad. So I go and I reach out to Miss Charlotte Jordan, aka Mom, and I say, hey, look, I talked to my therapist and they saying that this is caused because of what we went on, how things were when we grew up, our relationship, yada, yada, yada. And she says, oh, no, it wasn't like that. It was like this, I say, well, hey, we never had food in the house. And she said, well, y'all ate every day. So it's like, because we think differently about the situation, the subjectivity is there because she's saying she has her view and her opinion and her thoughts about how she thought it was, when she went through it, and that's her perspective. And then now and I have my thought process and my memory of, or at least what I think is my memory from some things that I thought I may have experienced as a child. But then when we get together, they don't necessarily match because how she saw things 35 years ago is not how I saw things 35 years ago. So now we have a roadblock in trying to move forward with me getting a clear understanding about my attachment and issue because I can't have a conversation with her. So that can just be a potential roadblock. That's something that your therapist or your coach, whoever, can help you navigate. However, it can be a potential roadblock. If I was way off, let me know. But if I was on, I appreciate that too.
This is the empowering perspective community, brother. You're not way off. We honor your perspective, and I think you're right. I want to add too, and of course we can say honesty. That's a huge one. Being transparent with yourself, being transparent with others. But I would say initially that one of the biggest potential roadblocks with clearly identifying patterns as trends is believing that you can do it yourself.
Hmm.
You can't see everything there is about you.
Yeah.
And if you're only listening to your voice, the only thing you're doing is giving yourself partial information. And in some cases, some people lie to themselves because they really think they didn't do anything wrong when it comes down to the situationships that they were in the past. So you cannot, and I'm going to say it again, you cannot do this by yourself. You need people in your corner who are going to be honest with you and tell you the truth. If you surround yourself with everybody, only thing to do is praise your name. Well, the only thing you did is created a cheerleading squad for yourself. They don't. I mean, they probably don't mean you any harm, but they don't mean you any good either. Because a good friend, a person who really cares about you, would tell you the truth, and that's what you need, especially when it comes down to the patterns and trends. So, absolutely, I greatly appreciate that, man. You guys are really adding value here. I want to grab, where'd it go? Um, there it is. Our life looks like the choices we make, and making choices from a broken consciousness is reflected in how we live. Man, I don't think you understand how much I like that point. Making choices from a broken consciousness. That is huge. And I don't necessarily have time to go into detail about that right now, but man, that was good. Thank you, MJ, for sharing that. And that's why I asked you to provide a little context. So thank you again. Um, moving right along, real quick, gentlemen, consider a different type of partner. Think about think about what type of partner would be. Think about what type of partner would be best for you, would be the best option moving forward. It could be very different from the type you've been attracted to. So with that being
That's
said,
a whole episode right there.
it is, man. Real quick, gentlemen, what are some challenges with this approach?
Now, say that one more time, because when you said it, I thought you were serious, like that was it. So say it again.
Consider a different type of partner, right?
Yeah.
Think about what type of partner would be the best option moving forward. It could be it can be very different from the type that you've been attracted to.
I think you should stop trying to find a partner. Work on you. Because what you're gonna do, all you're gonna do is bring your damaged self to damage somebody else, and then you're gonna find the same patterns of behavior going on in that relationship. And then when they don't like it, it's them. And it's always somebody else. And you never sit down with yourself and say, man, it's me. See, and when you can say it's me, then you can start taking everything that everybody always said about you, that everybody always thought about you, and say, man, there might have been some truth to those things. There might have been some something similar to what somebody else, or I was talking about somebody else, and this happened. When you can identify you for you and what because you don't see it all. Other people see some things that you don't see, and when you can take all of that in and work on you to the betterment, you stay out of relationships where you will work in that relationship to the detriment.
I think this is one of the issues with isolation sometimes, because you get so used to being by yourself that having somebody come into that, they have to be really, really special, and they have to really, really be the exact opposite of what you've been attracting. Once you find out that what you are attracting is not a good thing for your life, and it's difficult to trust. It's difficult to trust. It really, really is, man. It's difficult to trust. And then once that person lets you down, everything that happened to you before that person came into your life runs through your brain. And then all of a sudden, that person gets the butt of all of that, all because they messed up once. It's difficult to trust.
And I think it's easy to let. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think it's easy to let somebody down who have expectations that really don't even know their expectations. They don't know the end goal that they're trying to reach, but they expect you to meet their expectations. So it's easy to let that person down.
That's part of it. That's also a part of the self-sabotage too, though. You understand what I'm saying? So it all everything comes full circle when it comes to all of this. You understand what I'm saying? Everything comes full circle. You could have, like I said last time, you could have the best person in your life that's giving you everything, and you'll find a way to screw it up because it don't look right, or you feel like you don't deserve it.
So what I'm hearing you say is that this conversation literally dates back to about 6-7 weeks ago.
Yes. It's all the attachment disorder and dealing with somebody that you either not supposed to be dealing with because you feel like you just got to have somebody, or not letting people in because of how everybody else behind you. To me, it's all in the same bowl.
I think when you start coming to the understanding of everything, and I think some of the challenges is that you got to have the conversation now, right? So if you were a partner and you kind of got some understanding about your issues or whatever that you got going on, and they may not have grown to a certain level where you got to have a conversation at some point, and that conversation may not go smooth because you've been growing, you have understanding, and they don't. So I think that could be, one of the challenges with this approach.
I like it. I think one of the biggest challenges about this approach, MJ, I got your question. I'm gonna get there in a second. I think one of the challenges with this approach is that you can use this approach to maneuver around the work that you need to do for yourself. I think that's one of the biggest challenges from my own personal opinion. Because if I can look at people like going to a car lot and selecting a person based upon, some of the concerns that I have, then that means that I am avoiding the necessary work that I need to do in myself to be better. And somebody, who was it? There we go. Don't focus on what you want. Instead, focus on what you can be for somebody else. So if you stop focusing on the external and focus on the internal to improve this vessel, then you're going to end up attracting what you want. That's ultimately how it works. But what we do is we do it in reverse. I don't want to do the work on me, so I'm just going to find a person that accepts me for who I am. Nobody should ever accept you for who you are, and you should never accept another person for who you are. That's one of the big, in my opinions, that's one of the biggest false tales that would have ever existed. Accepting, you're going to set yourself up for success, for failure. Everybody has a responsibility to do and be better. With that being said, I will not tie myself to a person who is not working on themselves. That's how it should be.
Not only should you not take them for who they are, you shouldn't take you for who you are.
Precisely.
You should constantly be growing. You should be constantly learning. You should be constantly doing something to make yourself better for the person that you're supposed to be with. It ain't. Let me stop.
You're good, but you won't know who that person is until they show up. All right, moving along.
True.
Yeah, that's the key.
Them.
Yeah, you being selective. Oh man, I don't like it. I don't like it. All right. Last but not least, being intentional in relationships. Some may think that being impulsive and spontaneous in relationships is fun, but it could lead to more pain than pleasure. Be intentional and thoughtful about your goals. With that being said, gentlemen, what problems do the lack of spontaneity create in relationships of today?
I defer to y'all. I defer to y'all.
I think sometimes. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'm gonna let you go on this.
Let me mute my mic.
This will get me in trouble. Go ahead.
Put the question back up there. Yeah, you go, sir. I think it's a mute point, but yeah, everybody's different. Yada yada yada. But I think when you don't, I don't know. For me, I think spontaneity just have a great place in a relationship. I think the unexpectedness is great in a relationship because so many things in our life are constructed, and there are patterns and there are routine. So I think when someone comes in there and they offer a fun or a better, they offer some in the way of spontaneity, I think that's good. So I think, if you're having a rough day every day, Groundhog's Day, I get up, I work out, I go to work, I come home, I come upstairs. The next day, I do the same thing. Then I do the same thing. Well, it's cool to have some spontaneity. It's cool during the daytime when wifey send me a text, or just saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about you," or "Hey, you know what I mean? I got some."
We heard check.
That's
Yeah,
it.
keep going.
Let me stop. All right.
We heard check. Yeah, we got
Yeah. Or you know what I mean? Or it's like,
yeah.
I come home and like there's a my favorite drink, like soda or something is in the refrigerator. Like little stuff like that, spontaneity, I think that's a good thing. So I think that when you lack those things, and it's not a problem if you don't care about spontaneity. But I think if you're a person who likes it and enjoys it, and then when you don't get it, it's different. You know what I mean? I think when you don't get it, I think eventually you may long for it, or you may want it, or you may start trying to seek out those things. So I think that I would just leave it at that.
I think everybody loves to be thought of.
Yeah.
So whether it's your favorite pop or you soda, drink, whatever you want to call it, whether it's your favorite dessert, when someone else thinks about you, it could be in the most.
It don't have to be nasty.
Right. It doesn't.
There you go.
But
it could be the most.
But it can
what
be.
I'm hearing, it could be so simple and so small.
Simple.
It doesn't have to be big.
Yeah, I left your shoes by the door. Whatever it is, it could be anything, and everybody likes to be thought of, but a lot of times men think we think the little head, so we always spontaneity. We think, okay, when she come in, I'm gonna push her over the couch and we gonna do this. See, a lot of time we go straight there when their mind is getting off of work, getting the kids, and all this other stuff.
Sometimes they like that.
Mm-hmm.
See, you like
That could be the spontaneity that they're looking for.
Oh,
See,
here
but
we
a lot
go.
of times you
There
got to
you
get
go.
past here with them before you get there, and you just thinking you about to just jackrabbit Slim, and she ain't there. So spontaneity has to be something that they would like, that they appreciate, not you. It's not for you; it's for them. But you appreciate doing for them.
So what I'm gathering is spontaneity is more about thinking about the outcome for your partner and not what you can get out of it. Is that what I'm hearing?
It's,
Precisely.
yeah.
Okay.
But
Okay.
for both people,
For both people, yeah.
for both people. So it's not just for her and it's not just for me. It's me doing for her, her doing for me.
Mm.
You know, her doing spontaneous, you know, acts of spontaneity. Is that a thing?
Right.
Just
For
Yes.
me, and I
spontaneous.
do,
Yeah.
yeah. And I do the
But
same thing for her. Like,
Right.
you know, sending her text messages like sometimes I'll just come home, I'll just make a beeline to go somewhere else just to pick up something that she wants.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Or it's like I know if we running low on something, I need to go to the store to grab something on my way home. I just may go and just grab the water because the water is heavy. So instead of her having to go to Walmart and pick up water, I may just go one day when I'm going to the store and just grab a case of water. So yes, they're spontaneous, you know what I mean? And it's a little act, but however, it's a huge deal because now my wife only like 105 pounds. So now she had to like pick up, you know, a 20-pound bag, a 20-pound thing of water, put it in the car, you know, put it in the cart, take it out the cart, put it in the car, put it out the car. You know what I mean? So it's like if I can help with that, you know what I'm saying? So it's like that's just for me. So I think that the problems, you know, what problems due to lack of spontaneity create in a relationship today is I think it calls people to want for certain things, especially if they haven't communicated properly with the other person that this is something that they desire in their relationship. And to see how much better I get when I just slow down and just speak.
Hey, look, man. I had a
so
friend who's. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I'm like I said, this is why I defer to y'all. This is the part where I learned. So the spontaneity that you all are referring to, it's about you actually like I said, it's about you thinking about the other person and not what you can get out of the situation. It's about making the other person feel good, as opposed to I know if I make her feel good, I know I'm gonna get something out of it.
That's it.
However, there's nothing wrong with putting money in the bank and expecting to get a return at the same time.
Oh, I understand that.
Now, I'm not saying that you need to get a return immediately. However, I would tell anybody you don't just keep putting money into your bank and then eventually you can't get anything out of it.
So it
So
can't
I
be
had a.
one-sided.
Absolutely not.
No.
Okay.
So I had a friend, Minister Eric Newkirk. He used to have a saying. I thought it was crazy, but it was kind of funny at the same time. He used to say, "You got to keep finding ways to put the honey in the moon." Right. So Yeah, I know, right? Being spontaneous can actually be fun. That's the other side to it. And I'm an advocate of just finding ways to have fun. Like you should be laughing. Like laughter should be a part of what you do. And if you don't laugh, if you're so structured and everything has to go on a calendar and everything has to be planned out, that's another job. So again, when you start looking at this means of coping, it can be a little stressful. So this is one I don't necessarily agree with, right? Just like I didn't necessarily agree with choosing your partner to work around your issues, right? You work around your issues and you continue to find a way to have fun within a relationship. So listen, we talked about this and the thing I want everybody to understand, because I got to kind of wrap this up because I've kept you guys too long and I appreciate you guys staying with us. Man, we appreciate you guys. But we talked about this from like baby to adulthood. And I think one of the common things that we should grasp is that no one is exempt. I want to make sure I'm stressing that piece. No one is exempt. We stop at attachment issues, but there are also attachment disorders in adults. And these are the two attachment disorders. By all means, if you're curious, go look them up. You can learn more about them, but these are the extreme cases, right? Reactive attachment disorder, also known as RAD. And then you have the disinhibited social engagement disorder. So again, these are the extreme versions. So by all means, if you're curious about it, go look it up. But I promise you, these are some very special cases. So with that being said, I'm gonna give the floor to these gentlemen so they can give their final thoughts real quick. I'm gonna start below me and work my way around. So Uncle Junior, going to Chris, and then we're gonna go to Roland. So with that being said, gentlemen, by all means, have at it.
All right, I will start with this. Childhood trauma and attachment disorder. Whatever you have, I think it's important that you start with the person in the mirror. I think that is very important that you look at yourself. You try to figure out, like Roland said, identify the problem, identify the disorder or the issue that you have, and then start seeking some sort of self-improvement to kind of heal, kind of deal with these things so you can progress and move forward in your life. So I know we're running short on time, so I'll just leave it at that.
I'll say this. When it comes to childhood trauma, everything that we've talked about for the last couple of weeks falls under what happens when that person is going through it and acknowledges it at a later time in their lives. So I'm just going to speak as somebody that's dealing with it now. It is not disrespectful to try to deal with some of this stuff and ask some of these tough questions to the people in your lives that have actually caused you trauma in your childhood that are starting to manifest later on in your life. It may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility to fix it. So, like Unc said, put some people around you that'll help you and don't let it control your life. And I'll leave it at that.
Damaged kids become damaged adults with what they think is normal behavior when it's actually them just living in the means of their trauma, because now it has become muscle memory. So whether it's you, whether it's somebody else, whomever has identified that there are some issues that you have that aren't normal in a normal situation, you need to sit back and think to yourself and ask yourself those questions that will help you identify where you have past traumas, past hurts, and damage that made it to where you normalized it and think that everybody else should also call it normal. Seek help, surround yourself with positive minded friends, not yes men, but people that will tell you the truth and also help you grow. And don't try to get into a relationship while you're damaged. And damaged is a harsh word, but while you're not whole. When you get yourself whole, with whatever means that may be, then and only then should you seek out to be in a relationship with someone else. And if you're already in a relationship, hopefully that partner of yours is willing to do the legwork and walk that mile with you.
Absolutely. And just to caveat off what he said, do the work now. Don't let somebody else tell you what you already know. Do the work before you infect somebody else's life. Listen, we greatly appreciate you guys. We always look forward to these Friday nights. You guys add so much value. These gentlemen, I don't think they understand how much I appreciate them. I can't tell them enough. Like they add so much value, not to this, just not just to the show, but they add value to my life. So I just want to thank them personally. I want to thank each and everyone who joined us on tonight's show. And again, I want to make sure that you understand that we will be doing this again, same time next week. Make sure that you're here. Bring a friend. Don't come alone. Bring somebody else, because next week we're going to be talking about renewing your mind. So if you want to get into renewing your mind, if you know me, I've been working on this for some years now. Make sure that you're here with some other people. With that being said, have a great evening and have a fantastic weekend.